Ask you something, Miss Evelyn. Do you know what her pain is? Because the only reason a person would behave in this manner,
We're not going to
consistent.
we're not going to do that. She does not have a behavior problem, and that's not.
First of all, your finger in my face is not going to work for me.
But then I ain't calling you going to work for me because I don't appreciate you keep throwing out these names and stuff. All I had been is say to stop back for time. This I've been called.
The room went quiet the second Tamar Braxton said her mother's name. Not angry at first, not loud, just tired. According to viral conversations spreading online, Tamar allegedly revealed a painful truth she says she's been carrying for years, that Evelyn Braxton has been leaning on her financially in ways that no longer feel like family support, but obligation. The words didn't come out as an attack. They came out like a confession, like someone finally admitting they feel drained. Sources say Tamar described moments where love and money became tangled, where help slowly turned into expectation and expectation into resentment. What made the moment hit harder wasn't the claim itself, but the emotion behind it. Her voice reportedly cracked as she questioned whether she was being valued as a daughter or relied on as a resource. For years, Tamar has been the outspoken one, the emotional one, the sister who gets blamed for saying too much. But this time, listeners say it felt different, less explosive, more wounded. Because when a daughter says she feels used by her own mother, that isn't drama. That's heartbreak. And once those words are spoken out loud, there's no pretending everything is fine anymore. To understand why Tamar's words landed so heavily, you have to look at the history that shaped the Braxton family long before cameras, contracts, and checks entered the picture. Long before fame, Evelyn Braxton was known as the backbone of the family, the strict but devoted mother who pushed her daughters toward music, discipline, and survival. In the family narrative, Evelyn wasn't just a parent. She was a manager, protector, and sometimes the only line between stability and chaos. For Tamar Braxton, that dynamic was always complicated. As the youngest, Tamar grew up feeling both sheltered and overlooked. She watched her older sisters carry responsibility early, while she was often labeled the extra one, the loud one, the emotional one, the difficult one. That label followed her into adulthood and into fame, shaping how her feelings were received when she finally began speaking up. When success came, it didn't come evenly. Tamar's career had peaks and valleys, moments of massive visibility followed by periods of silence and struggle. During the highs, support flowed freely. During the lows, expectations didn't disappear. According to Tamar's own emotional framing, help within the family slowly became assumed rather than appreciated. What once felt like mutual support began to feel one-sided. The emotional history between Tamar and Evelyn is rooted in sacrifice on both sides. Evelyn gave everything to raise and guide her children, often at the cost of her own comfort. Tamar, in turn, felt pressure to give back, not just emotionally, but financially. Over time, that pressure reportedly became heavier. Tamar has hinted in past moments that boundaries were blurred, that saying no felt like betrayal rather than self-preservation. What makes this situation especially painful is the public nature of the Braxton family. Their conflicts don't stay private. Years of reality television have trained audiences to expect honesty, but honesty comes with consequences. Every argument, every tear, every accusation becomes content. Tamar's revelation didn't emerge in a vacuum. It came after years of being told she was too much, ungrateful, or dramatic whenever she expressed discomfort. Family whispers, old arguments, and unresolved resentments built quietly in the background. According to those familiar with the family dynamic, money became the unspoken trigger, rarely discussed directly, but always present. Who pays for what? Who helps whom? Who owes who? Those questions, left unanswered, slowly eroded trust. For Tamar, the emotional wound isn't just about money. It's about value. Feeling loved for who she is, not for what she can provide. Feeling seen as a daughter, not a solution. When she reportedly said she felt used, listeners heard exhaustion more than anger. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying expectations that were never renegotiated as circumstances changed. This backstory explains why her revelation resonated so deeply. It wasn't an isolated complaint. It was the culmination of years of emotional imbalance, complicated gratitude, and unspoken obligation. Tamar's pain sits at the intersection of family loyalty and personal boundaries, a place where guilt often silences honesty. Because when family and finances mix, love can start to feel transactional, and once that feeling takes root, even generosity begins to hurt. That emotional foundation set the stage for what came next, a confrontation not just about money, but about power, control, and who gets to define sacrifice inside a family that has always lived in the public eye. The conflict truly ignited when Tamar's emotional admission stopped being read as venting and started being interpreted as an accusation. According to people close to the situation, Tamar Braxton didn't intend to expose her mother in a dramatic way. She believed she was finally explaining why she felt so depleted. But once the words, "using me" and "money" were connected to Evelyn Braxton, the story took on a life of its own. What Tamar reportedly described was not a single incident, but a pattern, requests that never felt optional, expectations that came wrapped in guilt, and an unspoken rule that her success meant permanent responsibility. She allegedly said that whenever she tried to set limits, the conversation quickly shifted from finances to loyalty. Help wasn't framed as generosity anymore, it was framed as duty. And that distinction is where the conflict exploded. Family members were said to be stunned, not necessarily because they disagreed, but because Tamar said it publicly. For years, these tensions had been managed behind closed doors, negotiated quietly, or avoided altogether. Once spoken out loud, however, the issue could no longer be softened. It demanded sides. It demanded interpretation. The public reaction intensified the conflict. Some listeners empathized deeply with Tamar, pointing out how often adult children, especially the most successful ones, are expected to carry entire families financially without complaint. Others pushed back hard, arguing that Evelyn's sacrifices as a mother justified continued support. Gratitude versus boundaries became the central argument, and neither side was willing to give ground. Then came the first shocking twist. Sources suggested that Tamar's frustration wasn't just about current demands. It was about money she says she didn't even know she was responsible for. According to the chatter, Tamar allegedly realized that certain expenses had been quietly routed to her, assumed to be covered without explicit agreement. Whether intentional or not, that realization changed everything. The twist wasn't about greed. It was about consent. About finding out expectations were being set without conversation. That revelation reframed Tamar's pain. It wasn't simply, "I help too much." It was, "I don't get to choose when or how I help." And once that choice disappears, generosity starts to feel like obligation. For Tamar, that line was the breaking point. The conflict deepened as past moments were re-examined. Old family arguments suddenly looked different. Scenes once dismissed as personality clashes were reconsidered as power struggles. Tamar's emotional outbursts, long criticized, were now viewed by some as the language of someone who felt unheard. Others still saw them as disrespectful. The divide widened. Behind the scenes, communication reportedly deteriorated. Conversations stalled. Attempts at clarification turned defensive. Every discussion circled back to the same unresolved question: who controls the narrative of sacrifice? Evelyn's years of motherhood versus Tamar's years of financial support, both real, both heavy, both weaponized unintentionally. The shocking twist landed fully when observers realized this wasn't about proving anyone right or wrong. It was about renegotiating roles that were never updated. The family had grown, fame had changed circumstances, but expectations stayed frozen in time. Tamar wasn't rebelling against her mother. She was rebelling against a role she never agreed to keep forever. And once that truth surfaced, the conflict could no longer be contained. Because when unspoken agreements are exposed, someone always feels betrayed, either for asking too much or for finally saying enough. With emotions now raw and positions hardened, the story was primed to escalate further, pulling in public opinion, family loyalty, and a second twist that would flip how everyone understood who really held power in this relationship. The escalation came fast, and it came from every direction at once. Once Tamar's word spread, the situation was no longer just a private family dispute. It became a public referendum on motherhood, money, and obligation. Every clip, every quote, every pause in Tamar Braxton's voice was analyzed for intent. Was she hurt? Ungrateful? Brave? Disrespectful? The internet couldn't agree, but it wouldn't stop talking. As the conversation intensified, pressure mounted on Evelyn Braxton to respond. Her silence, at first interpreted as dignity, quickly became controversial. Supporters argued she was protecting family privacy. Critics claimed silence was avoidance. In the court of public opinion, restraint often looks like guilt, and that perception fueled the escalation. Behind the scenes, insiders suggested the conflict was worsening, not cooling. Tamar reportedly felt misunderstood, watching her pain reduced to a headline about money rather than a cry for boundaries. Evelyn, on the other hand, was said to feel blindsided and disrespected, hurt that years of sacrifice were being reframed as exploitation. Both women felt erased by the way the story was being told. Then came the second major twist. Sources close to the family suggested that the money issue wasn't one-directional at all. According to this perspective, Evelyn didn't see herself as using Tamar. She believed she was managing family resources the way she always had, under the assumption of shared responsibility. The twist was realizing that what Tamar experienced as pressure, Evelyn experienced as normal family operation. No malicious intent, just radically different expectations that were never clearly discussed. That revelation reframed the conflict from exploitation to misalignment. Tamar wasn't accusing her mother of greed. She was expressing exhaustion. Evelyn wasn't intentionally taking advantage. She was operating under old rules in a new reality. Fame had changed the scale, but not the structure. And that mismatch created resentment on both sides. As this understanding circulated, public opinion fractured again. Some softened toward Evelyn, emphasizing cultural expectations around family support. Others doubled down in support of Tamar, arguing that intention doesn't erase impact. The escalation now lived in nuance, yet nuance struggled to survive online. Family members were reportedly pulled into the storm. Sisters felt pressured to choose sides or remain neutral, both options carrying emotional cost. Conversations that once felt safe now felt strategic. Every word risked becoming a quote. Trust eroded under the weight of constant interpretation. The escalation peaked when observers realized something uncomfortable. Even if both women were right in their own understanding, the damage was already done. Public exposure had forced a reckoning neither was ready for. The relationship couldn't return to its previous form because that form relied on assumptions that had now been questioned. Because escalation doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from silence meeting expectation, and neither side knowing how to translate their truth into language the other can hear. With emotions stretched thin and roles under scrutiny, the story moved toward its most painful phase yet, the fallout, where consequences settle in and relationships are forced to adapt to a reality that can't be undone. By the time the story reached this stage, the fallout was no longer loud, it was heavy. The kind of weight that settles in after the arguing slows, and everyone realizes something permanent has shifted. What Tamar Braxton shared had opened a door that couldn't be closed again, and the emotional consequences rippled through the family and the public at the same time. Tamar's emotional state reportedly grew more fragile as the days passed. People close to her said the constant debate made her feel misunderstood. She wasn't trying to shame her mother, she was trying to explain her exhaustion. But watching her pain turned into think pieces and comment wars left her feeling exposed all over again. Instead of relief, she felt isolated, questioning whether honesty had cost her more than silence ever did. For Evelyn Braxton, the fallout carried a different kind of pain. Insiders described her as deeply hurt, feeling that her years of sacrifice were being rewritten as exploitation. To Evelyn, being labeled as someone who uses her child struck at her identity as a mother. Friends say she felt judged by strangers who didn't know the history, the struggle, or the countless ways she had supported her daughters long before money existed. Within the family, tension spread quietly. Conversations became cautious. Some sisters reportedly tried to mediate, while others chose distance, fearing that any comment could be misinterpreted publicly. Family gatherings felt strained. What used to be familiar ground now felt uncertain. The fallout wasn't explosive, it was draining, the slow erosion of ease and trust. Public reaction grew more reflective. After the initial outrage, many fans began sharing personal stories. Adult children feeling burdened by financial expectations, parents feeling unappreciated for lifelong sacrifice. Tamar and Evelyn's conflict became a mirror for countless families dealing with the same issue in private. That recognition softened some judgments, but deepened the sadness of the situation. What hurt most was the realization that both women felt unseen. Tamar felt reduced to a wallet. Evelyn felt reduced to a stereotype. Neither felt fully heard. And once that happens, resolution becomes difficult, not because love is gone, but because pain is speaking louder than affection. The emotional fallout settled into an uneasy pause. No dramatic statements. No public reconciliation. Just distance and reflection. The kind of silence that doesn't signal peace, but processing. Because fallout isn't always fiery. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the ache of realizing that love alone doesn't fix broken expectations. And with emotions still unresolved and communication strained, the story edged toward its final moment, one that wouldn't offer easy answers, but would leave a lasting question hanging over the Braxton family. How do you rebuild when honesty changes the relationship forever? The final twist didn't come from a rebuttal, a receipts-filled interview, or a dramatic family meeting. It came from something far more unsettling. Nothing was denied, but nothing was fully explained either. And in that silence, the meaning of Tamar's words began to shift. People close to the family suggested that Tamar Braxton didn't backtrack because she couldn't. Not because she wanted to escalate, but because what she shared was her emotional truth, not a ledger. You can't fact-check exhaustion. You can't disprove how burden feels. And that realization became the twist. This conflict was never about amounts. It was about agency. For Evelyn Braxton, the cliffhanger lives in perception. Even without a formal response, her role in the public eyes subtly changed. Some began to question long-held assumptions about family dynamics and financial reliance. Others doubled down on defending her sacrifices as a mother. The divide hardened, not because new information emerged, but because interpretation replaced dialogue. Here's the twist that reframed everything. Both women may be telling the truth at the same time. Tamar's truth, that she feels used and overwhelmed. Evelyn's truth, that she believes family support is shared responsibility born from love and history. The tragedy isn't deceit, it's misalignment. Expectations that were never renegotiated collided publicly, and neither side was prepared for the fallout. The cliffhanger deepened when observers noticed a shift in Tamar's tone. Less reactive, more guarded, as if she realized that speaking further wouldn't clarify, it would calcify. Sometimes the bravest move isn't saying more. It's choosing not to say anything else. And yet, the question lingers. Will Tamar and Evelyn ever sit down privately and redraw the boundaries that fame blurred? Will silence become their truce, or their distance? And what happens to a family brand built on openness when honesty becomes too costly? Because the hardest truth in this story isn't about money. It's about how love changes when expectations go unspoken for too long, and what happens when those expectations are finally named in public. The screen fades here not with resolution, but with uncertainty. The kind that waits patiently, knowing that unresolved relationships don't stay quiet forever. They resurface in conversations, in distance, or in one last attempt to be understood. And when they do, the next chapter won't need an announcement. It will write itself. This is where the story pauses, and where the conversation truly belongs to you. What unfolded between Tamar Braxton and Evelyn Braxton wasn't just about finances. It was about boundaries, gratitude, and the silent agreements families carry for years without ever naming. When those agreements finally surface, they don't just challenge behavior, they challenge identity. So ask yourself, if you were Tamar, how long would you carry expectations before saying you're tired? If you were Evelyn, how would it feel to have decades of sacrifice reframed through one painful word, used? And when love and money become tangled, who decides where support ends and obligation begins? There are no easy answers, only perspectives shaped by history, culture, and personal limits. What's clear is that speaking up comes with a cost, and staying silent does too. The hardest part isn't choosing one, it's living with the consequences of either. We want to hear from you, respectfully. Do you believe honesty should always be public when a family lives in the public eye? Or should some truths stay private, even when they hurt? Can two people be right at the same time and still be far apart? Share your thoughts in the comments, but keep the conversation thoughtful. This isn't about picking villains. It's about understanding how pressure builds when expectations go unspoken for too long. If you want more deep dives that stay focused on the title, center real people, and explore the emotional layers without turning pain into spectacle, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this chapter may be quiet for now, but unresolved stories have a way of returning when the time is right.